Yo!
Juste attends.
Allez hop. Je ferai le stream et tout là.
Non, attends, voilà, Boucher est en train de record la session du coup aussi.
Ah, parfait.
Okay, but anyway, fine. We can start. Today's session will actually be on mainly typography for storyboarding purposes. Last sessions, if we remember, like we did a general introduction for storyboarding, like how to use Storybrew, how to use the commands in the script. And hopefully some of you did the assignment and kind of understood a little bit more about this topic. We also did a session where we created this simple storyboard that we actually designed for the lyrics to be the main focal point of the actual storyboard. This is why I have sections like this, where like I have black bars focusing on the text, which is going to be just here. So yeah, so usage of typography in storyboarding mainly for lyrics and credits design, because it's the main thing you're gonna do using typography. There are some other use cases, for example, like designing like other elements using typography, designing like, for example, the mapper names. Like you could have the mapper names for a collaboration, for example. You can have the mapper names here. You can see this in a lot of actual collabs, like most of the collabs that have storyboards have the mapper names and maybe the name of the part, or if it's a compilation, the name of the song, etc., etc. So this course is about typography in general. So yeah, I divided this into 3 sections. The first section, which is an introduction to typography. So where is typography and what is lyric-centric storyboarding? This is like just abording really quick lyric-centric storyboarding. And then we're going to see the importance of typography in lyric and credit design mainly, but you can apply the same principles to actually other, whether you're being like just graphic design in general or like, as I said, the other elements that you can create using text. Anyway, by the way, okay, I'm back. So yeah, I wanted to say if the sound cuts sometimes, I mean, if it's getting too obnoxious with the sound, just let me know. Don't hesitate to ask any question during the session. Okay, so the second part, as I said, is typography in general, which we're going to learn about. So general design principles for typography in graphic design, and I wanted to have a section which is going to talk only about how to choose a font or a specific example, how to choose a font pair. Then we're going to do a practical application, which is going to be an example, which we're going to do with this storyboard. We're going to design some lyric effects with Storyboard, so you can actually know how to use the storyboarding tools in Storyboard to design the effects. So yeah. Okay, so let's start with introduction. So what is typography? This is the Wikipedia moment. So typography is a bunch of procedures that are used, like these procedures are used in compositing the characters. So the characters of a text, for example. To make it into a legible way. So this is our first, the first thing we're gonna do, like the characteristic of our typography. It needs to be legible, but it also needs to be visually appealing. Yeah, in a visually appealing way to the reader, like the person who's gonna read or who's gonna see our storyboard. So typography encapsulates a bunch of concepts which are derived from graphic design, can also be applied into motion design and in our class in storyboarding specifically. use them will increase the perceived value of the displayed information. So we're going to see this in a moment. So if you use accurately your typography concepts, the value of the work that you're going to actually make, even though it contains the same information. So we're not going to change the text itself. We are only going to change the way the text looks. So after that, like the value of what you're putting out there is actually higher. So lyric-centric storyboarding is the type of storyboarding that focuses heavily on lyric display and animation. So by using them as a focal point in the storyboard composition. And I say this, if you don't have another focal point, so if you have like, for example, a song with lyrics in it, you can use the lyrics and the effects that you're going to do on the lyrics as your main focal points. But you can also use it as secondary focal points. So for example, in this first picture from a storyboard that uses the lyrics as the main focal point. So you can see the lyrics are actually written in bold, and there are actually 2 layers of lyrics. So using 2 distinct fonts and are in the center of the screen. So this is our main focal point. But here, you can see in the second picture that the lyrics are on the sides. So these are secondary focal points. So the main focal point is the animaker right here, and the lyrics are secondary focal points. So we're going to learn how to design these lyrics in order to make them either a main focal point or work well with your already existing focal point. So the importance of typography in lyric design. So learning concepts about typography will help you present your lyrics in a stimulating way. So, for example, excuse me. Yeah, for example, if you just have like plain text, like if my text here was like in a different font and wasn't actually like in different weights, like you would, for example, think that this title has the same importance as this text. So presenting the lyrics in a stimulating way means like you actually feed more informations just by having the lyrics presented in different shapes or forms. Emphasizing different parts of the lyrics displayed is the same thing as said previously. So for example, here this title is in bold, so it emphasizes this title even more. If I go back to the example, so here we can see that this line in white is emphasized more than the line in the background in yellow, since it has a thinner font. And yeah, but like this word, which is outlined, is more emphasized than the rest of the phrase, since it has a different style. So yeah, you can apply emphasis on your lyrics. So easily creating visually appealing composition. So using the concepts of typography, it helps you to create visually appealing. This means like nice looking compositions in general with your lyrics. So it's not going to be hard, like it's going to be easy. Establishing visual hierarchy, hence guiding the eye of the reader to the important information. We're going to talk about this a bit later, but using typography, we can establish hierarchy and like guide the eye. So you're going to guide it from one focal point to another. If we consider this as a scene, for example, we can say that our main focal point will be these 2 pictures. The second higher focal point will be this text. And the third focal point is this explanation. So the eye of the reader is going to focus first on these 2 pictures, then he's going to read the text, then he's going to read this text. So yeah, and how did we do that? With hierarchy. So hierarchy with size, with different font weights, etc. etc. We're going to come back to this a bit later. And finally, building recognitions make your lyrics stand out among the hundreds of lyric designs in storyboards. So having solid basis for typography will help you make recognizable lyric effects. So if you apply these concepts, it will help your lyrics stand out from the rest. Okay. Now, let's start with the real shit. Second point, typography. So we're going to talk about the concepts and how to use the concepts. So if you take a look at these two examples, I'm already highlighting which example is the better of the two. So let's analyze for a little bit. Here, we have a text that actually uses one font. And the difference in weight between the fonts, like you can see, this is a kind of semi-bold font. This text is also semi-bold. And this one too, and this one too, and this one too. So it actually doesn't even have hierarchy in it. Like it has hierarchy with the size of the text, but not the weight, not the color, not anything else, like not the font even. So maybe we can talk about these two paragraphs being like stick together. So here we can see that there are two paragraphs, and here there is no space between the two paragraphs. So we can see that they look like it's only one paragraph. So this is a problem in alignment. If you can see here, there are no real white space inconsistencies. But yeah, so this type of design is to actually avoid social. I don't think like it's straight up bad, but it can be a lot better. Like here, we apply some hierarchy using different fonts, different ways. So this is, for example, a semi-font, semi-bold font, and this one is like a lighter version of the font. And he uses actually two different fonts. So we're using font parents and one specific font for the title of the article. So yeah, it's a much better way of actually arranging, which is fundamentally the same information. So presentation has a big role in influencing like the perceived value of what you're trying to like present. So the first concept that I want to talk about, and I think it's the most important one, and I already started talking about it, is hierarchy. Hierarchy is categorizing the text by assigning classes that have different characteristics. So when you have a text, you want to have a certain relation between the text. Like you want to highlight the text that is more important by making it have some specific characteristics. So these characteristics can go like pretty much anything. Like it can be the color, the size, the typeface, which is the font that you're using, the weight. So weight refers to the fact that you're using either a slim font, a bold font, a semi-bold, extra bold, extra thin, etc., etc. The alignment also. So having something in the middle of the screen or having in the right or the left actually reduces or increases the importance of that text. So if we have this example, you're going to notice that the most important element and the highest element in the hierarchy is this title. So titles always should be high in the hierarchy, and then if you like consider focal points, this is going to be like your second focal point. But if you consider hierarchy, I think this one is the second most on top in hierarchy, since it's different from this paragraph by using a italic typeface and a different color. So this one is the highest because it's a big bold font. It uses a different color. This one is the second highest since it's a bit over, so it's on top of the first one, but it's still not as big and uses a thin typeface with italic and a different color. And this one is the last. So yeah, you can play with actually these parameters to actually create classes of your fonts. So usually you're not gonna need to create like more than 2 or maximum like 3 classes for your fonts, unless you're writing like essays or articles. Then there you're gonna need to have different types of classes. But for a storyboarding, you're gonna usually need like only 2. So if you take a look at this example, see that the presentation of the credits is actually has hierarchy in it. So the first element of hierarchy is, which is the alignment factor. So anything that is on top has actually more importance than something that is at the bottom. Then if we analyze like each title separately, we can see that there is hierarchy between the two. So here it depends on actually what you want to see as hierarchy. So someone might interpret this as the title having more importance than the actual person who did that. Since this is using a bold, but this is actually bigger in size. It has a different font and a different color. So I would argue that this is the name of the person who did the hit sounds or like the composition, etc. Like the name of the person who did that has more importance than the title by itself, because this font is a pretty standard font. But this one, since it is a script font, it has more importance. So yeah. Is everything clear up to this point? Like, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, but it's actually the point of it being like, even if it wasn't hard to read, just like the human brain will make it so you're going to read the things from top to bottom. Like with this composition, yeah, it's going to be read from top to bottom. But like from a design standpoint, if you're talking pure like importance or weight wise, then yeah. Eleanor, did you have a question? Like you can actually unmute and talk.
Oh, usually when I see two fonts together, right, one of them tends to be smaller and the other is bigger, right? But in your case, both have like similar size. Is it easy to pull that technique? I don't know.
So you think like these two fonts have similar sizes?
Kinda, yeah. The other is a little bit bigger, but it's not like super drastic, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for this example specifically, it's more like of a constraint of being limited by the space. So one use case that you can actually afford to have like a super small font and the other one being super big, like is if you try to have like each title being written like separately. So if I did like the bitmap first and the hit sound second, then this one, then this one, I would have done the hit sound like very small and like the OPP also like super big.
Okay.
Yeah, but here since I need to actually display a lot of information, like yeah, I did this. Okay, no more questions. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. So, in my opinion, a hierarchy is the quintessential concept for font. I think it's the most important for me. But there are other concepts. So the second concept is contrast and consistency. So contrast can relate a bit to hierarchy, but like it's different things. So having elements of similarity and difference between your typos will actually reinforce the visual identity and avoid being too repetitive and boring. So having elements of consistency in your typography design will help it be easily recognizable. So it will like be different from the other designs, but it will also help like make it stick together. Like from if we do the analogy with like mapping, for example, you always try to have like elements of similarity inside the map, so it feels coherent together. So it's exactly the same thing with typography design. Here we're trying to have elements of consistency between your fonts. So this can be, for example, a common color palette, or for example, having your fonts having some similar elements, like whether it is the style of the font or like something else. But for contrast, contrast actually help make your design less boring. So if we take a look at this one, we have our main element of similarity. Like in this case, it doesn't show up, but if it was like a sort of book or something, would be the color palette used. So here with this like kind of very light brown, this very heavy brown, and this black. So this would be our main color palette with these three colors. And elements of contrast would be here like the color between the two, the typeface used in these two, and the repetition. So yeah. And the other concepts, which I think are like less important in general, but are like this is mainly to not like have a 45-minute presentations on all the concepts. So you can actually look up these concepts on your own. So color, I actually give you an assignment on this. So yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Alignment is just where do you put your text in the composition. So on top, the bottom, left, right, center, etc., etc., and how you align your text, like compared to. So if you go back to this example, here you can see that all the elements are aligned to the same line. Like they're not centered, they're aligned to the same line. Yeah. And white space management is like very similar to how you manage your white space in a bitmap. So you do the same thing. So these are not like specifically related to typography, but like there are more graphic design concepts in general. So yeah. Then we're going to talk on how to choose a font or typeface. So when choosing a font, you need to take like a few criteria into consideration. So first of all is the mood of the font, and to this I added like the emotion. So the emotion and the mood of the font, it's not actually the same thing. So the mood of the font is, for example, let's say this font that I chose feels like kind of professional, but like not too much. If you take a serif font, for example, these are usually very much used in like they give a sort of royalty feeling. So maybe, for example, a luxury brand or like a hotel. And in before, they used to be like the standard for official documents and like anything that feels really professional. But nowadays, these type of fonts are the ones that actually feel the more professional. Like they feel modern and professional. So for a feeling like this, like for a website, for example, let's say you have a brand and you want to actually make a website. So using a regular sans serif font, like a very bold one, is going to be the best choice. But the emotion transmitted by the font is another story. So fonts can be categorized depending on what feeling they give. So, for example, let's say this font actually feels old. So the fact that it is like, I don't know how to explain this, but if you trying to create a vintage poster, for example, using this font would actually be a good choice. Let's say this script font kind of feels childish or like very informal, and it kind of has a nostalgic feeling to it. So I don't know how to explain this, but the emotion of the font actually changes from one person to another, but usually there are some kind of rules that you can actually play with. So the energy of the font is kind of tied to the mood also. So with fonts that are actually very professional or like this, we kind of call them low energy. And it actually relates to how smooth the curves of the font are. So a font with smoother curves like this one would have actually more energy than a regular stiff font like this, but also the angle of the font. So if you take this, it's actually angled a little bit on top, so like 5 to 10 degrees. And angling your typography actually gives it instinctively more, how can I say, more energy, like it's more dynamic. And finally, like you need to consider the overall fitting with the theme. So if you're making like a poster for something that's a horror movie or something, you need to actually choose a font accordingly. But also it needs to be fitting with the other fonts that you're using in your typography. So this is why I have a sections called that talks about font pairing. So usually using only one font is, I would say it's a bad idea, especially if you don't vary the type of the font. So if you're using the same exact font in all your designs and you don't vary the weight, you don't have an italic variant or a bold variant of that font, it's actually a bad idea for this. So this is why you're using font pairings, which is one of my favorite things to do. So usually for font pairings, you need to have like 2 or 3 fonts, like at most. Having more than 3 fonts, like if you have 4 fonts, you're gonna have problems first pairing the fonts, because pairing 2 fonts is easy, but pairing four fonts is actually harder. And also making them work together and be consistent, because the more fonts you have, the less recognizable the fonts are gonna be and the less important they are gonna be. Fonts that work well together and fonts that help communicate your message. The fonts that work well together is kind of subjective. Like you can have weird combinations that actually work. But like, for example, having a script font with a regular sans serif font is actually a good idea. Or having, for example, a sans serif font with an outlined version of that font is actually a pretty nice combination. And fonts that help communicate your message the best is actually relating to the overall fitting with the theme. So yeah, if you're gonna, as I said, for horror movies, you choose horror fonts. And even when you choose a sans serif font for something that's like horror or like, I don't know, like an anime or something, you're gonna choose a sans serif font that relates the best to the actual message that you're gonna want to communicate. So yeah, now this is the theory part, but now we're gonna do a practical application. We're gonna switch to Storybrew, and we're gonna start coding some effects. Up to this point, are there actually any questions, like about what I told up to this point? I'm gonna share this doc, by the way, after the class.
Can you show maybe this page with the moods and anything, or just send me a screenshot of it? Like before you showed the pairs with fonts.
This one?
No, before. 2 pages. Yeah, this one. Wait a second. I'm just gonna make a screenshot of it. Yeah, thank you. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, so this one. First, Walabush's question. In my opinion, yes, but not that much. Like, not the specific choice of the song, but it's more like what genre is that song. So it needs to actually fit the genre of the song. So for example, if we go back up to the very first diapos, so this one, I chose these two fonts, especially this script font, since I thought it was really fitting with the, because this is a what's that, a hip hop song. So I think it's kind of fitting, like it's a, what's it called? By yeah. So it is this song. For me, it fits the mood really well. But for this one, I chose this font because first, it is a bit like, it's not that serious of a font, and it fits like the anime song, which is, this one is from Kimi no Shiranai Monogatari. So yeah, so it's more like the general mood than the actual song itself. For the best fonts, I actually literally Google, like if I want a sans serif font, I just write sans serif fonts free, and like you can type best. And there are tons of articles, like you can see. I've checked most of these articles looking up for font. Like I checked this one, this one, this one, this one. And you can check and look up, like if you want a script font, you can just place. For Japanese fonts, I go to free Japanese fonts and this website. I can actually copy it and paste it here. So yeah, this one has a ton of fonts and it has a lot of category. I like the Gothic category because it has like the very simple fonts that actually work in most cases. So yeah. So for example, this font that you see right here is this one. It's like, yeah. More questions? Okay, so now let's start with the technical part. So as you know, to create lyrics, you need to have it inside a script. So I already have my main lyric script right here, but you can do like, yeah, new script, etc. Like you can use the base lyric script, but so you can use this base lyric script, but it has two inconveniences. One, it actually sometimes does something extra that you don't want to do. You can actually customize this lyric script to actually do the exact thing that you want your font to do. But I don't like using this for the second reason, which is it uses SRT files. So when you use this one and you go to configure, it's going to ask you to give it a path to a subtitle, and which I don't like using, like subtitle path. I don't like using this because I'm wasting time creating the subtitle file. So yeah, for now, I'm literally going to show you how to make your custom lyric effect. So first thing we're going to do is instantiate a font generator. So storyboard layer, this is our main layer, as we've seen in previous classes, and it's the layer we're going to use. So when you have a layer, you need to instantiate the layer. So layer equals get layer, and we give it a name. So lyrics. Then we have a font generator, and the reason I declare my font generator outside the generate method is that I can use it in future methods. So here I have my pre-done methods. So here is the method that I'm going to use to actually make the subtitle, the lyric line. So yeah, I mean, this is my way of doing it. So if you have another preferred way, you can actually go for it. So yeah, here, so have our font generator. So font generator, the name of our variable, equals load font and you give it the path to the sprites of the font. So once you generate the font, every character or every word that you're going to use is going to be put inside the SB/Japanese folder, for example, inside your bitmap folder. So it is going to create a Japanese, Japanese folder here. Yeah. And it's going to put all the characters inside it. Then, where am I? You're going to give it the path to your actual font. So here, you just need to go to your project folder, paste your font here. So for now, I'm using this font, and give it the path to the font. Then you have font size, which is the size of the font, the color of the font, the padding, which is like a sort of transparent space around your character. So sometimes, for example, your font is like kind of bad. So when you write a Y letter, so this, it's going to have like some parts of it chopped off. So in order to remove that, like you increase the padding. So yeah, this actually happens a lot on script fonts. So the font style, we generally put it to regular. So system.drawing.font style, regular. Trim transparency, use true. So this is going to remove any excessive transparency around the fonts, the character that you're going to use, and hence it will decrease the size of the assets. So yeah, this is highly recommended. Effects only, this means that it's not actually going to generate the font. It's only going to generate the effects of the font. So if you apply some glow and you use effects only, it's not going to generate the font, only the glow of the font, or like the outline or the shadow. And debug, I don't really debug anything in Storybrew, so I set this to false. So you can actually, these like are mandatory, but these ones are actually like not really necessary. So you can, for example, make your font don't have any glow, nor any outline, nor any shadow. So you don't actually need to learn these. You can just literally go add effect, go to lyrics effect. I will edit this one, and you can copy it from here. So here it has all the parameters that you actually need. So yeah. So here I'm gonna remove the font outline and the font shadow because I'm not using those. I'm only using my regular font with my font glow. Yeah, that's it. Let me just remove this one. Okay. So here, now that we have our font generator, we can actually make a method that is gonna write a single line of that font. So we need to actually give it parameters. So we're gonna make our method here and we're gonna call it right here. So here, I will tell it the string that I want to actually write. So it's gonna be string lyric. Lyric will contain the string of characters that we're gonna display. We need to give it a int start time, which is the time that it will start showing the lyrics. We're gonna give it the int end time, and this is like my way of doing it. So you can do like, you can add more characters, you can add like less characters, etc., etc. For me, I'm doing this, and I'm gonna add stuff the more I go. So here, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna declare a double scale, which is gonna be the scale of the font, because I'm usually changing this like with trial and error. Yeah. Double scale equals 0.22. This should work. Now, before actually starting with generating the lyrics, we can actually go back to the lyric.cs, because I'm too lazy to actually reprogram this. So you go down to the generate per character, and we're gonna take this one, these, and copy it and paste it right here. Okay. So for each var letter in our lyric line, so it's not line, it's here, and the name of our font generator is going to be this. So I'm going to paste it here. And instead of multiplying by font scale, I'm multiplying by scale. And I'm going to explain really quick. And font height, we don't use it. So here should be a double. I'm going to explain just now. So this will be a loop. This loop for each character inside our lyric line. So it's gonna go through each and every character. So if the lyric line is hello, John, it will first take the H, then the E, then the L, then the L, then the O, etc., for each and every character. And it will add the base width multiplied by the scale to our line width. So this plus equals means that it's going to take line width and it's going to add to it this value. And this is going to actually calculate the total width of our line in the storyboard. So because we actually need it in order to center our line. So yeah, this is basically what it is doing. Then just after this, I'm going to do another for each loop, which is basically the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through each and every character in my lyric line. For each character, I'm going to create this texture. So I'm going to create a var texture. The var texture, like by doing this, is going to actually take our font and make a texture out of the letter. And from doing this, it's going to create an asset that is going to be inside the bitmap folder. So here, inside the Japanese font, you're going to see in just a minute. This texture actually contains also the path to our asset that we need. So with this, now that we have a texture, we can create a var sprite equals a layer that creates sprite. So we can actually create the sprite. And we give it texture dot path, which is the path to the actual texture. Now, what I want to do is take the sprite and scale it. So sprite.scale, we're going to take start time and scale it to this scale. So scale it to scale. Right. Now, I want to actually give it a position. So what I'm going to do is, just give me a second. I'm going to create a variable. Let's make it a double. Pose x equals 0. And let's say I want to actually display my lyric in the middle. So the coordinates of the middle, if you press and hold Alt, you can actually see the coordinates down here. So if I go to the middle, like the absolute middle is 320 and 240, so around here. So I want to display all my lines right here. So this pose X is actually going to refer to the very first position of the lyric line. So you're going to see in a minute. So I want to have my sprite, when I create my sprite, to be in a certain position. So I'm going to first give it a origin. It's the origin dot center, and I'm going to give it a position which is going to be new position. New vector 2, which is always going to be 320 minus 0.5 times line width plus expose. Pos x. And on the y-axis, it's going to be always 240. So here we're having an error. It's because vector 2 actually takes only 2 floats. So, and since this is a double, we need to actually convert to a float. And in order to do this, you put this in parentheses and you type float. And it's going to convert this value. So this expression actually means this will help us center our lyrics. So 320 is the absolute middle in the X. Then I'm going to subtract half the line width, because when you think of it, you're going to have like the first half right here and the second half right here. So theoretically, the line should start here and not in the middle. So we're going to start our line from 320, which is the middle, minus half our line width. And expose is actually the distance, the width of the line so far. So it's going to start with 0, because I'm going to start here. And the more I'm adding characters to that, I need to actually increase the expose value. So this one is actually like the trickiest thing to do. Like it's the most complex thing to do in the class. Like the rest is actually very simple. So, but before, the texture can actually be created for a letter that's actually empty. So I can create a texture for a space. And if I create this, it's not actually going to create an empty texture, which is like basically a picture that's fully transparent. So if I'm doing this, it's going to create a texture like the variable texture, but it won't create the sprite. So I need to actually do a condition. So if texture dot is empty, I will do this. But as we said, we want to do this only if the texture is not empty. So I'm going to negate this, and I'm going to do this. Like this is negating. So this basically, if the texture is not empty, we're going to do this. We're going to create the sprite, etc., etc. So sprite.scale, we're scaling the sprite. Now we're going to animate. And the idea I had is that like when the lyrics actually appear, they're going to fade from 0 to 1, and they're going to either like move from the top or move from the bottom up to a certain point. And we're going to randomize like whether they are on top or on the bottom. And I actually want them not to align perfectly, like they're going to be like staggered a bit with like 2 or 3 pixels from each other, like on the y-axis. This is going to be going to give a very like destructible kind of feeling. And this fits really well with the mood of the Guess Who's Back song, in my opinion. So what we're going to do in order to randomize things, we're going to need a random number generator. So for that, we just create random, give it a name, R&D. We instantiate our random. So R&D equals new random, and we give it a seed. So this, you can actually choose any seed. It's going to just give you the type, like the seed that the random method is going to use. Here, we need to randomize a bunch of stuff. So let's say I want to either have my lyric come from the top or the bottom. So what I can do is do an if statement, rnd.next of minus 50 plus 50 is superior to 0. So here, it basically means it's going to generate a number between minus 50 and plus 50. And if this condition is true, I'm going to do this. Else, I'm going to do this. And we're going to see what we're going to do just right now. So as I said, I want my sprite to fade. So it's going to fade from start time to up to start time plus, let's say, 150 milliseconds. Start from 0 to 1. Okay, perfect. Then at the end, I want the sprite dot fade from end time up. I mean end time minus 250, and then end time, and from back to 0. Note that we can actually take this value and put it right here. So int fade duration equals 250, which is actually better. So we copy this, paste here, and each time I want to change, I don't need to change twice, I only need to change once. I also can do it up here. So if I want it to be as a parameter of my method, I can put it right here. But yeah, I just wanted to here, down here. Okay, nice. So it's going to fade from 0 to 1. It's going to fade back from 1 to 0. Here, if it gives us a plus 50 value, I actually want it to be like go from the top to the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to randomize another number. So var y offset. So this here equals rnd.next, this one, of like, let's make it an integer. rnd.next of either from like, let's say 7 pixels up to 17 pixels. And I want another offset, which is going to be, let's call this, and the offset final, and which is going to be either like 0 or let's say 4. So in order to understand what I'm doing with this, I'm going to do the sprite dot move y method, which is basically going to move our sprite on the y-axis. So here I want it to move from, let's say, start time up to let's give it start time plus fade duration to here. Okay. So I want it to move from the top, so I'm gonna take like 240, which is the middle, and then I'm gonna subtract from it the y offset. So this means it's gonna start like a bit on top. So 240 is here, so like 230 should be right here, just on top of it. And I want it to move up to 240 minus y offset final. And you can actually see that the smallest value, or the biggest value of y offset final is smaller than the smallest value of y offset. So it's always gonna go downward. So, and I want to have this offset, because as I said, I want some characters to be like staggered from the this one, like to each other. Okay. And for this, I actually want to add some easing. So must be easing. Let's say out. So it's going to give it some easing. So in the second case, I actually want to do pretty much the same thing. But here, instead of subtracting, I'm going to add. So instead of starting from the top, it's going to start from the bottom and then go up to that one. So that's it. It's like literally it. So yeah, we can actually, I think we can do from start time to end time and actually give it a big easing. So I'll explode. So let's copy this and paste it right here. And at the end, when I'm done moving the sprite for my character, I'm gonna move to the next character. But before moving to the next character, I actually need to increase this value. So I'm gonna do posX plus equal the same thing as this. So I'm saying I want to increase the posX value by the width of the texture times the scale that I'm actually using for the font, which is 0.22. So in this case, when it's moving on to the next character, when it's gonna place it on the x-axis, it's gonna move by one character. And note that I put this outside the condition for the empty texture. This is because even if the texture actually doesn't have a sprite, it still needs to count as a space inside my lyric. So I think it's done. We can actually go and look up the lyrics for Guess Who Is Back lyrics. And actually take a random point like this one. At this point, the lyric starts. By the way, as I said, I mean, I didn't say this, but this may seem like very complicated, and this is the way like I'm designing lyrics in general. So if you don't feel like really comfortable with this, or you actually didn't get everything that I did, it's fine. Like you actually need to practice this, and I think you need to practice this quite a bit to be actually comfortable with it. And I highly encourage you to try different ways of programming the lyrics, so you can find the best way that actually suits you in order to program this. So let's say I want the kanji lyrics. Okay, so it's this one. Didn't actually copy. I hope so. So I'm gonna go to my generate method, and I'm gonna call the generate line. I'm gonna give it the string. I'm gonna give it the start time, which is this time. So I just Control C on Storybrew, and it's gonna copy the timestamps. And I'm going to the end. So to this point, to here. Semicolon, and I save, and I can see like a preview of my lyrics. I mean, I hope it works. Okay, so it actually works, but I think that the size is actually a little big. So I'm gonna reduce the scale. So let's do 1. Okay, nice. So as you can see, it actually works fine. And actually see that it does randomize a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really happy with the random because there are like way too many ones that spawn on the bottom and some on top. So we can actually change this. And check for different results. So you can actually see that the font actually has some outline to it. Okay. But let's say I don't actually want to randomize. So let's say I want one character on top, one character on the bottom, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do is create a double, which I'm going to call top equals true, and I'm going to do my condition according to top. So let's say here top. So the first character is going to be on top, and at the end of the loop for the first character, I'm going to say top equals the opposite of top. So it's going to be what's this? On top bool, which is a boolean. Okay, nice. So at first it's going to be true. So it's going to enter this loop. Then it's going to be false, and it's going to enter this one, and then this one, and then this one, etc., etc. So if we change, we should have one character on top, one character on the bottom, one character on top, one character on the bottom, etc., etc. So yeah, we have the characters on the bottom, have the characters on top. And it's given this. All right. I think it's been like 1 hour since I started. So if we check not this one, the map sets folder, and we go into the SP, we're going to find a new folder, which is this one. And you can actually see that it has the outline. So here has a sort of outline glow thingy. So this is because we actually did the font glow. Okay. You can actually program more effects. So inside this loop, you can actually do pretty much anything. So if you want like your font to start out big and become small, you can actually change this to end time and start from like twice the scale and then go to like half the scale, for example. Or you can actually rotate it. So if you want your characters to rotate during the animations, you can pretty much do anything. So the basic idea is just you give it a string of lyric. If you want to center it, you calculate the width of your line. You calculate your position each time according to the line. And you do a for each loop for each letter inside the lyric. And you do this. And you can do actually, you create a texture, then a sprite. If it's not empty, then basically do anything you want with the sprite. Like it works like a normal sprite. You can go to sprite commands, the Storybrew wiki. Go here, go to the anyway. You can go to the sprite command section and look up the sprite commands for people who actually didn't were not here when we did the sprite commands lesson. Okay, I think that's it. I think we're a bit over an hour or like almost an hour. Walavushi, can you confirm? Like, how much are we at? Okay, perfect. So 1 hour is the time I wanted to take. I actually wanted to program another generate line method for like another effect, but I can do this after or in another class. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you have like a million questions because it's like pretty hard for people who never did this. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone needs to start practicing because like it's really hard to understand just from this. You're not gonna learn lyric design because here it's like it was really fast because I did talk about like the theory and the practice. So yeah. I mean, I'm always available like you can always ping me here and I will try to help you. So yeah. So if there aren't any other questions, I think it's the end of the session. Thank you so much for coming. See you in the next one.